You are listening to The Learning Curve with Miss Taleen. This is a space where you can feel empowered to think about education differently.
Welcome to The Learning Curve with Miss Taleen. Now, today's episode is a little bit different than the first couple that we've done, and it's because I had the pleasure of interviewing author of Royal Oak Comics, Jamaal Harley. And we dive into a variety of topics like banned books, inspiration about creativity, and his experience in education. And now that led him to be the author that he is today and how he is continuing his journey in his creative process. So I hope you enjoy this as much as I do. Thanks so much. Okay, so Jamaal, tell me a little bit about you. Pretend we've never met and tell me a little bit about what you've been up to and what you're doing.
Sure. My name is Jamaal Harley. I am a writer. I started my own comic book publishing company called Royal Oak Comics. That's named after a street I lived on when I was like 7. And so it's been a good influence on me. And at that school or around that time, I had a lot of good teachers that got me really said I was a good writer. I didn't think I was, but gave me that encouragement to constantly pursue it, whether it was writing short stories, poetry, did music for a long time. And then I decided about 2019 that I want to get back to my passion of comic books, and which was introduced to me by my dad. So I'm a huge comic book fan, love Marvel movies, love, that whole world. That is just my jam.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's pretty much it.
So what have you been up to?
I have moved back. I was working remote. Decided to save a little money, move back home since I'm working remote.
Might as well.
Yeah. Um, So yeah, no, that was going good. I was working in this company, Deluxe, working with YouTube content,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a really cool job. And then the layoffs at Google happened earlier this year.
Yes, I read about that.
Yeah, so that was a weird morning,
I
where you
bet.
like you go to like, and I mean, people had it way worse. Some people went to their computers and couldn't even log in.
Wow.
Yeah, so normally we hop on the computer, we jump on these different chats and just catch up and see what's on the agenda, and like probably 75% of the team is gone. And then
Wow.
yeah, then there
So
was
when did it affect you personally?
they pretty much let us know about mid-February that you're you're out of here March 31st.
Oh,
Uh
so it was effective relatively recently, but you found
yeah,
out about it a while ago.
yeah. So
Man,
yeah.
I'm sorry. So was it Google specifically you were working for or like
No,
an
I was working for
offshoot?
Yeah, I was working for a media tech company called Deluxe, and we were vendors for Google. So
Mm.
it's like I worked with all Google people. I didn't work outside of my team of 3 other people that worked at Deluxe. Everybody else I worked with was Google. So like if I went to like a Deluxe office function, nobody knows who I am except for HR.
Got it. You're like,
So
remember me? I'm that guy that emailed you a while
yeah,
back.
exactly.
That's fun.
So, but other than that, things are good. Like I'm actually had multiple interviews there, and then I just got a text from my old boss that they're looking to hire me back for a different role.
Oh, hooray.
Yeah, so it's good. How have you
Good.
been?
I've been good. Wait, so do you work remotely or are you going back into an office if you get this new position that your boss was texting you
I'm
about?
back in the office.
Okay. You
It's
know
a
what?
nice office though.
It's not terrible though.
Yeah.
I realized how much I missed it going back to being with people.
Mhm.
Like I liked being home, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
it was hard in education because
Oh
holy
yeah.
cow.
Yeah.
But
My
yeah, no,
girlfriend was a teacher, and I saw like her try to adapt, like especially when it first started, like I guess March, April 2020. Yeah, yeah.
teachers did such an amazing job. Like I think that they really, 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 really did everything in their power to try to engage every kid. And then
Yeah.
it was just, there's so much that was out of our control that you're just
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Where does she teach?
It's called Goethe. It's German speaking school.
Oh,
And
cool.
I think I want to say it's El Rey, but around that area, El Rey.
That's super
Yeah.
cool. That's funny that it's German. Like my kids, we homeschool them most of the time, but there's a couple days a week that we send them to like a Montessori school nearby, and they just got a kid in the class who only speaks German.
Oh,
And so now they've been like catching on to a little bit of German just because they're trying to communicate with this new kid in their class. And it's going great.
yeah.
So it's like, oh, it's funny that like German seems to be making a comeback here. So
Yeah.
that's good. Wow. So is she bilingual? And then do they teach bilingually at the school? Do you know?
Yeah, she actually t knows 5 languages and studying her sixth language.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, I'm trying to catch him.
That's a lot to keep up with. That's
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's very
So
cool.
yeah, so it's
Wow.
like it teaches everything, but also has a heavy emphasis on also learning German.
Wow.
Yeah,
Very cool. I really like admire those dual immersion programs where you can learn both of those languages at the same time because kids are really, really spongy. You might as well take
yeah,
advantage of it while they can do it. That's really cool. Well,
exactly.
good for her. What grade does she work with?
She started off with first grade. They moved her to second grade.
Hmm.
So there's a little snafu. She was gonna actually move up to third grade,
Oh,
but like there's a weird. They're gonna give her a green card. Something happened with her visa, so she actually had to go back to Austria, and we're hoping that she gets her visa at least by August, so she could start this next school year. But we'll see how
wow.
that goes. Yeah.
You've had a lot of wrenches thrown into your plan. Like, holy cows. Sorry.
Yes, it's okay. I'm used to it by now.
You're like, we're just gonna roll with the punches and it's fine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, everything on my end has been pretty good. It's just been I'm trying to get this company started. I started
Nice.
it, but I'm trying to create like resources and then I'm trying to make a curriculum on the side, but then the podcasting thing and then I just have to be very good about social media.
Mhm.
That's hard for me.
Me
So
too.
I'm like, yeah, so to be as consistent as I think you need to be with something like that, it takes a lot of time and effort and planning and all that stuff. So I don't know, but it's fine. And then kids, they're in the mix and we have to they're first, they're the
Yeah.
priority and then we have to work around them. But they're kind of part of everything I'm trying to do. Like I'm trying things out on them and
Awesome.
seeing if it works and then try things out on the kids that I work with at school, see if that works and then, have conversations because now my job is to work with the teachers most of the time. Like I will observe them and help plan with them and give them feedback and just help them feel more comfortable in the classroom setting until they can just kind of let them go and
Yeah.
then fly on your own baby bird and you can do it. So that's kind of
Yeah.
where I've been. So yeah. All right, we're going to dive into a lot more of that because to me, like your process, I've been just sitting on the sidelines, like watching all of your social media and your GoFundMe's and everything, and how you get funded pretty quickly. Everybody
Thank you.
seems to really they have your back, they're sharing your stuff, and I think that it's really inspiring and it's wonderful because I knew you were having, like, you had a day job and you're doing this. And I'm like, all right, he's hustling. That's great. And he's following his passions. And I think that that's really inspirational. And I was wanting to talk to you more about it. And so I'm glad that you're on so you can talk to me about it a little bit more.
Well, thank you for
So,
having me, and thank you for saying
oh,
all that. That's really nice.
I'm so proud of you. Like it's
Thank you.
so
Thank
cool.
you.
And it's brave. You're putting yourself out there. Like I know anytime I used to write in school or even now, like I had to update a resume for something and a cover letter and I was giving it to like my mom and Douglas to proofread and I was like, oh, don't be mean. And I feel like you're so vulnerable in writing. Like there's
Yes.
just you're kind of raw. How do you feel about that whole
Oh, totally.
process?
I am, I'm a naturally an introvert and naturally kind of like I was always artistic, but I was always like, keep it close, don't really want to share. And people would look over my shoulder like, you should put that out. I'm like, no,
I don't
that's
want
scary.
to. Yeah.
um, but oh, sorry, I need to turn this off. I
No, you're fine.
apologize.
You're fine.
So yeah, but through different teachers and friends and other people giving me encouragement, it gave me that um encouragement to do it too, and like just to seeing other people do it and try and succeed, and it's just like, yeah, why not? It's why not? Just go
Yeah.
for it.
So I'm so curious about this. Like, I'm an avid reader.
Mhm.
Um, and I always wonder like how an author comes up with stories in their head so detailed and then they write it out. So your format is in comic books,
Mhm.
which is really, really cool. And I want to dive into that a little bit more too. So how do you think of the stories? Like how do they come to you? How do they inspire you? How does that happen?
My brain doesn't shut off. I'm constantly thinking. I'm constantly, you know, creating stories in my head. Like when I was a kid, like the first, like before I would even write stuff, I just wanted to go home and play with my toys, and I'd have whole story arcs for my toys. And that's just like how my brain worked. And I use that in music and other things, but like I'm constantly thinking of stories. I'm constantly writing down ideas, and it's like even my dreams. Like I'll dream of something. I'm like, that's a good idea. I should
Yeah,
write.
sometimes that's where some of the magic is, right? You're
Yeah,
like, I wouldn't
yeah,
have thought of that if I were awake.
yeah.
That's
Like
really cool.
sometimes some of my best ideas are just driving. Like if I have like a long drive, like I'm thinking about a story
Hmm.
or creating a mini story in my head. Like, what about this? What if it goes that way? Well, what if it goes this way? And like that's just I don't know. It's a gift and a curse. It's just
Yeah, well, it seems to me like this is something that you're like put on this earth to do, right? You're
Mhm.
meant
Thank
to
you,
be a story writer. Like you
thank you.
cannot turn that part of your brain off. And I feel like I mean, personally, I think that that's like a sign that that's your gift to the world, and that's really great.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
so, did you start journaling as a kid? Like, what's your earliest memory of writing?
Earliest memory of writing. One of my earliest memories was actually trying to create my own Ninja Turtles comic book when I was like 5. And I like had like the Ninja Turtles fighting the Foot Clan, and there was speech bubbles, and there was a whole story to it. Like I could probably find it
You
somewhere.
have it still. Oh,
Oh
that's
yeah,
great.
I do not throw away my art stuff.
Oh, good.
And so that was my earliest memory of writing. My teacher, Mrs. Turquette, in 6th grade is
Hmm.
when I wrote this weird story about aliens and something like this, and I was convinced. She said you can write whatever you want to write, and I was convinced it was just not going to be good, and she was going to hate it, and she got an A+, and she's like, you should keep writing,
Wow.
and I didn't listen. I should have.
Well, you did just eventually, maybe.
Exactly. Exactly. At that time, I was really focused on drawing. I wanted to be
Hmm.
do that, but yeah, that was like I always held on to that memory because that felt so good. That encouragement from my teacher saying that you're really good at this and this is something you should keep doing.
Hmm.
You know, I was always like good in like math and history, but I didn't think I'd ever do anything with that. But writing was something that did, just drew me to it. I
That's
was I
that's
was drawn
amazing.
to it.
Yeah, you were drawn to writing. I like
Yeah.
that. Now, the art in your comic books, do you draw it or do you hire out
Oh,
illustrators to do it?
yeah, I definitely hire illustrators to do that. I do help with a little bit of the concept art. I still have a little bit of drawing skills to be like, can we make the character look like this? Or, I would like this kind of pose here. I can do like a quick little sketch and then they make it way better than I could do it.
Right. That's awesome. Where do you find your people? That's
Uh, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit. There's a bunch of groups on Facebook. There's a bunch of groups in Reddit. um, that are just artists looking to find work all over the world.
yeah.
And so you just, you can they put out ads saying, hey, they're looking for work. You can put out a post or ad saying, hey, I'm looking for an artist, and you can give like examples. I'm looking for an artist that can is close to this artist or these images. And yeah, the internet is amazing at connecting people who want to create.
That's that's so true. And
Yeah,
that's great because I know artists are always looking for ways to, well, not always. Sometimes they don't want to make money off of their work, but some people do,
yeah,
and they do such a great job at it. That's great.
yeah,
Now I have questions because the way education is set up right now, there's a few things you've mentioned that I wanted to dive into. One is like the role of pop culture in inspiring people, inspiring kids. You mentioned using the Ninja Turtles as one of your first, you know,
yeah.
inspirations to make your own comic book and things like that. Can you speak to that a little bit, like how you think pop culture may play a role in like our traditional education system and how we can kind of take it and be creative with it? What do you
Yeah,
think?
as a kid, like I guess before, like comic books and cartoons were like my first like loves, and I was just drawn to animation and drawn to drawings of characters,
Hmm.
and it teaches you stories, and especially like in the '80s you had GI Joe, and at the end of each episode had a lesson, and like it's like you're supposed to have the value of the episode, and like I forgot what the slogan was. Somebody else probably does, but yeah, and stuff like that, and it helped you like navigate certain situations as a kid and into life. And I think some of my best teachers kind of like use examples of like in math, like what it's like how many slices of pizza did Michelangelo eat, and how many slices of pizza are left. Like now my brain is definitely paying attention.
Yeah, so you're like, I'm in. Like, that's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So it
and
hooks people's attention a lot. And then you took it a step further and you're paying attention to the animation, the story arc, things like that. And I feel like that's like optimizing pop culture to like its highest extent. Like I think that that's really great because
yeah,
art is inspired from art, creativity is inspired from creativity. It's really interesting.
definitely.
Um yeah, because whenever like I work with kids sometimes for reading skills, and before we get into any sort of diagnoses or if I'm trying to figure out what their issue is, like we do an interest survey and I try to figure out like what it is that gets them going. And we talk about like what's your favorite TV shows, movies, what do you like to do in your free time, things like that. And then trying to use some of those things to like inspire their
Yeah,
love for that. So
yeah,
hopefully, because if they're with me, that means that they're struggling just a little bit and they might feel a little bit defeated. So I'm trying to make it a little bit more inspiring for them. So it's good to know that that works well into their adulthood, like for you,
yeah.
So that's great. Yeah. And then uh okay. Now I don't know which way. You know what? I'm going to go this way with my next question because I have a couple of things written down based off of what you said. Now, we were talking about art. We're talking about hiring artists. We're talking about authors and creativity. How do you think technology and AI might play a role in any upcoming, things? Like one of the most like again, I'm an avid reader. One of the most hurtful thoughts that came to my mind was like, oh no, what if one of these books one day is just written by a robot and I like connect with it so much and it wasn't even written by a person, type of thing. And then I'm like, should I even care? But I feel like I should. I don't know. So I'm kind of torn. I see the benefits. So tell me your thoughts. Like, what do you think? Like, tell me everything.
Oh, it is, especially in the comic book community, it's a very divisive topic because like I understand where artists are coming from, where they feel that this computer or even writers is taking their work and then somebody else can ask it to do something and then make money off of it, and they're not making money off.
Right.
I'm somewhere in the middle. Well, I guess the other flip side is just people using it reckless abandon and not caring about the artist. I'm somewhere in the middle. It's here,
Right.
and when I was doing music, I didn't want to use auto tune because I thought that was cheating. And now
Right.
there's, so many number one songs with auto tune. So I missed that boat.
Yeah, I know. How long do we fight this for is my question. And then
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I also look at it as kind of a little bit like, music sampling that was taboo for a long time. And now it's as long as people get paid or you're not making money off of it, it's fine.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm in the middle, like I use it as a tool, like for mostly for references to the artists that I pay. So I like because like a lot of times I'm just like doing a Google image search or going on Instagram, like make the helmet look like this and the knee pads look like that, and the arm rest of. Now I can kind of like type that into the computer and kind of get a gist of it. So that kind of saves time, but I'm still supporting an artist and paying an artist to draw that image.
Right.
Um, so I think trying to incorporate it into your workflow with whatever you do, or at least learn about it, so you don't get left behind if it does become more mainstream, or if it does become like, hey, we're looking for a prompter, or like I don't know. I just really hope it doesn't you know hurt society. I hope we can find a way to work with it that you know, artists, writers, creatives still can do their thing and not be completely, you know, uh, overtaken by, a computer program.
Yeah. Because I mean, I want you to also, I'm going to ask you to think about yourself if you were the teenage version of yourself trying to start um writing, let's say you're sketching comic books that you might want to publish at some point, even if it was just on a school-wide level as opposed to um a public level. But how do you, this is where I'm stuck. Like, how do you introduce it as a tool and not something for them to be dependent on, and
Yeah.
that's where, because I feel like as an adult now, you've gone through lots of writing, the writing process, you know how to think creatively, you know how to edit, you know how to do all these things. But for developing minds, I'm wondering how we introduce it to them, so if we're inspiring them to be artists um or authors or any other sort of creative venture, or paper writers just learning how to do that, like how how do you do that without, I think you
I,
need to address the elephant in the room. Not you specifically, but I mean the general you needs to address it. And
for sure. I think right now it can't do everything right now. So it's just learning, I guess, the basics of, like right now I'm teaching myself Photoshop and I'm starting to draw a little bit more again.
mm-hmm.
And I'm teaching myself the basics. And I'm having fun with that because right now AI can't do everything. Like I did a prompt this morning and it just wasn't having it. It did not come out
Yeah.
at
Okay,
all. Like
good. Yeah.
yeah, I thought my words would make it do what it does.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's like it kind of got it half right. So it's like, okay, well, if I had like, the graphic design skills, the drawing skills, I can take that image, incorporate part of it, manipulate it enough to where it is what I see in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, but yeah, and just like, also fostering, like, hey, learning there is something to trying and failing and then working at something and getting better. There is more reward. I feel there's more reward in life than just, instant gratification that only lasts very, not as long.
Right, right.
So, teaching kids that, hey, it's okay to try something and not work out. You just try again. And then you get better. And then you see those results. And then get that fulfillment and that reward and, esteem that comes with it. So there's benefits to it. And it's something that we should, strive for.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm on board with that answer 100%. I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, you mentioned, I'm going to dive into my other thing because I wrote this down. You mentioned mistakes and failures and things like that. And I feel like that is such a huge part of learning and creating and just education and life in general. Did you have experiences throughout your childhood, your schooling, where you did fail, you fell on your face, but it was like embraced, or was it more of the traditional like F moving on, type of thing? And then how do you work with those mistakes and failures and learn from
Yeah,
them?
I don't know. I grew up with a huge fear of failure, and mistakes were like I don't know, mistakes were something I couldn't come back from. It's kind of like how things were when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that that's being moved away from,
Yeah.
and that it's like it's okay to fail. It's like okay, you can learn from your mistakes. That's something I had to learn in my late teens, adulthood is it's okay to fail. It's part of the process. Failing is how you learn. It's not the end of the world. It's
Good
not it's
thing
not
too.
going to go on your permanent record and you're not going to get into college and yeah, no. you
That's what I
know,
was always afraid of, was like it was going to go on some sort of record and they're going to be like, you failed this test in this
no,
class this one time. Tell us
yeah,
about that.
yeah, exactly. And that never happened. And
Yeah.
so yeah, like, definitely, fostering that in anybody like, I meet that, it's a part of life because I still meet people who really feel that they're afraid of failure. They don't try because they're afraid of failure. They don't try because they're worried about what somebody they don't know is going to say about whatever.
Yeah.
You know that's okay.
Yeah.
People are going to have their opinions. It's but as long as you are working on you and you keep going, you're winning.
Absolutely.
You know.
I noticed even like in my own kids, like I noticed my daughter about a year ago when she would make a mistake writing or drawing, because she loves to draw, she loves to write, and she started off with little scribbles like this, and she told me that she was doing cursive, and then if she made a mistake, I mean, it was going to be like this fallout, like on the floor, right? And so she was 4 and she's doing this like and I'm like, it's really okay, like, and so she still has pieces of that in her, and I try to make mistakes in front of her and go, oh no,
Mhm.
look, I made a mistake. I'm gonna either start over, erase it, or work with it, because we've been doing art, and I'm like, the cool thing about art is like you can work around a mistake or on top of a mistake, or you can work the mistake into whatever you're doing,
Right.
and and we joke, we're like, you're an abstract artist, you're just you're doing things, you're getting to know how the paint works together and things like that.
Yeah.
And there was that, and then it was funny because we were out for a weekend with our friends and their kids, and she made a mistake while drawing. They were following like a YouTube tutorial about like a step-by-step drawing about drawing like a slice of pizza with a smiley face on it or something like that,
Mhm.
right? And so she's following the steps and she messed up, and she started like, oh
I don't
no,
know.
right? And then her friend was like, that's why pencils have erasers. Like, it's okay.
Nice.
And then I was like,
Nice.
that's it. And she's like, oh yeah. And it worked, because she's little. And
Yeah.
so she's like, oh yeah, pencils do have erasers and that's what I can use. And it's fine, But as they get older, like it's harder because they internalize it a little bit more and it feels more permanent sometimes. And um I think teaching kids that mistakes is like a huge part of the process. Like you can't get better without falling flat on your face sometimes, and
Yeah.
then saying like, what are you going to do about it, and then you know abandoning ship might be the right thing to do, or trying again. We'll see. I don't know.
I
But
think you
yeah.
touched on it too. It's like sometimes a mistake could lead you to a different direction or a better path or way of doing something that you never thought of.
Yeah.
So that's happened to me a few times. I was like, I didn't mean to do that, but that's great. Let's do
Yeah. It
that.
might even be better. I don't know. It's a happy mistake. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was like you too. Like I was so afraid of failure. And I see that like in my kids sometimes, like they're
Oh,
like that. And I'm like, no, 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 don't do that. Like it's okay. Like
yeah.
it's not gonna be the end of the world. What kind of schools did you go to growing up? Were they public, private, charters, homeschool? What kind of setup did you have?
All public.
All
All
public.
public. So yeah.
Here in the LA area, or
No, I was a military brat, so
oh.
bounced around from South Korea to Southern Illinois to Southern California.
Wow.
Philippines too. Sorry, I forgot the Philippines. Yeah,
How'd you forget the Philippines? I
yeah, I
want to
know,
know.
right?
Wow. So what was that like going to school in these different countries and things
It
like
was
that?
it was interesting because it's mostly on military bases, so it's still pretty Americanized, but
Hmm.
you definitely got to meet a lot of different people that you probably wouldn't have like got to meet. I was exposed to to like foreign cultures, and so like I still like to seek out like and learn about different cultures, um, and travel a lot. Not I think it was great for me.
Yeah.
I know it's like it can be moving around a lot can make it hard to make friends for some people. Um, I mean, it just I fit in better than certain places than others, so like it wasn't that bad for it wasn't bad for me at all. So one time it was we stayed one spot too long. We stayed there for 7 years and then we moved, and that one was hard.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Because I know I have friends who are like in the military or their military wives, and they are raising their kids in a bunch of different places. And I know I hear mixed things. We live by a base,
Mm,
and so sometimes we interact with you know, the kids that are on a base and stuff.
yeah,
And so it's really interesting.
yeah,
That's really cool. I had no idea.
yeah.
That's really cool. Nice. Um, I had another thought and I forget what it was because it was based off of what you said. It'll come back to me.
Okay.
Okay. My next question for you. All right. Banned books is a big topic um in the education world right now. And I think in general, but just really it's what can we talk about in the classroom and things like that. Um, do you think it's appropriate to ban books? Or is it like a sometimes thing? Or do you think like what are your thoughts on it as an author?
I'm really anti-censorship. I think um I agree that maybe the things should have age limits. Like, okay, you can't handle this now, but maybe when you're this age, sure, I'm okay with that. But outright,
Seems like really sensible.
yeah,
Like, why can't we just do
yeah,
that?
it's like I'm about giving people options and exposing yourself to as many viewpoints as possible. And that's one of the things about being a writer is like I write characters who I don't agree with, you know, but there's people like that in this world that exist. And, I want to explore how they think, why they think that way, why they think that that's okay. And, I can put my counterpoints in a different character. Um, so it's like, yeah, I'm all about information. I'm all about trying, even if I don't agree with it, seeing why you think that's that way, or why that's okay. Or I don't. I think when you silence people, you're stopping discussion, and you're stopping the ability to understand where other people are coming from, and then you're also missing out on the things that you do agree, and find and by not listening to some aspect of somebody's life, yeah, I think you're missing out on life on so many different levels. Yeah.
Okay. Have you found personally, while reading something from somebody that you wouldn't typically agree with, that because you were exposed to their viewpoint on something that your opinion changed or you softened your um opinion or anything like that? Have you personally experienced that?
Oh, all the time, all
Yeah.
the time. It's you I don't know how deep I want to go into that, but
I mean, well, whatever
yeah,
you're comfortable with is fine.
yeah, no, like because I was one of the places I lived was the Bible Belt, and a lot of stuff there that's not acceptable. And as a kid, it didn't feel right to put people in box. I didn't like being put in box.
Hmm.
So I always came from the vantage point of I don't like being put in a box. why would I do that to somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I had some like, things that were taught to me. I had some unlearning to do, and how I unlearn those things is by reading and being able to empathize with somebody else's life
Mm-hmm.
and seeing the parallels in their struggles with my own struggles. And it's like I can I can't say I relate, but I can empathize, or I can understand why somebody feels that way because they were allowed to express themselves
Right.
and write it down, or and I was in a position to read it and make my own decision. you know
What?
yeah, and that's the thing, is when I think when you ban stuff, you're taking away people's ability to make their own decision. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like you're not going to agree on everything. It's just not going to happen. So let people get the information and make their own decision.
Right. And just be open to learning about other points of view.
Mhm.
To me, it's just censoring via, or not censoring, but making the age specifications or recommendations makes the most sense. And then
Yeah.
that's it.
Mhm.
Like, we have kids. My son, for example, reads, he's 6, but he reads at like a high school level. Like he just has a
Nice.
photographic memory and things like that. I
Nice.
cannot give him all of the books that he can read. Like, it's just, and so we get stuck with that sometimes too, where we have advanced kids and then we're like, hey, we want to keep them going and keep them challenged and keep them, well, okay. But once you start getting to that level of stuff, you're going to get into a lot more, um, maybe war or violence or sex or whatever it is. And, P6, he does not need that yet,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so to me, I'm like, no, don't censor it. It's just, there's a time and a place for it. And
Right.
it's not when they're like this big, right?
Right.
They're just,
Exactly.
little kids. But it's really interesting that you say all of that, because I agree so wholeheartedly with it. And I understand why you didn't want to dive in super deep with the Bible Belt stuff. Like, I get it. So I personally, like, I went to a Christian school when I was growing up, um and I remember, and then going to a public university and just learning so much that opposed what I was taught for the first, 12 years of my life. And so but my mom would always uh offer that opposing view, because she put me in that school because she wanted me in a private school, and those were the only options out here. Was it had to be like a religious private school. That's what it was. And my dad more or less follows the religion part of it, and so I have like a very distinct memory of coming home from school one day in 4th grade, and I was like, and we had science books, right? And they were all Christian based. And, no shade. It is what I learned at school. And it was like, creation is what happened, evolution is a lie. Can you believe that these people think that humans came from monkeys or something like that, right? And I was like, what? They do? And then I came home and I was like, Mom, can you believe that some people think that we came from monkeys? And she's like, yes, I'm one of those people. And I was like, what? It like blew my mind. And then I was like, okay, so I like and that's what I remember. Like from that point on, I was like, there's always a second side or a third or a fourth side to a story. And so every time I was like reading about things and listening to things, like I had to be cognizant of just all these different opinions that come into it, and just know that that's the case. And then at the end of it, you decide to believe in whatever you believe or not believe, and that's it. Like there's not much else you can really do. I don't think that there
Yeah,
is
I
much else.
totally
So,
agree. Totally
yeah.
agree. 'Cause I as a kid, I went to church every Sunday,
Hmm.
and I had the same in public school. They taught you about evolution, so I'd hear one thing in church and I'd hear one thing in school, and I think I turned out okay.
Yeah, yeah. One might argue like a well-rounded individual,
Oh,
So
hey.
it's really interesting. I'm
Yeah.
watching my kids go through it too, though, So, um, we're not particularly religious. We're not anti-religion either. We just don't really. We don't go to church every Sunday. We don't
Same,
do.
same.
And uh but my in-laws are very religious, and they will talk with our kids about the Bible and all these stories and stuff, and I'm just hearing them like taking it in, and then they will ask questions, and they're good questions, like, how do you know where you go when you die? And I was like, well, it's just a matter of what you believe. I don't know if we'll ever know for sure, but if that's what you think, that's what you think. It is what it is, but just be open. And I tell them the only thing I don't want from you is you making somebody else feel like they're bad or wrong for thinking differently than you. That's the
Right.
only thing. Like if you come out of this, reading the Bible, going to church every Sunday, I'm not mad at it. Like it's totally fine, but you just can't make another person feel like they don't belong or,
I totally agree.
you know, and
Totally
so
agree.
there's that. So I don't know, but yeah, yeah. I had an I had another thought. I usually am writing things down, but I was so engaged in your response. Um, so you traveled around a lot. You were in the Bible Belt. Now, when you write your characters in your comic books, you mentioned that you will put in views and perspectives that you don't agree with, that are opposite of you and things like that. Do you find inspiration through conversations
Oh
or
yeah.
reading material or something that you have with other people and you're like, okay, I need to incorporate that and I need to use that? Can you tell me a little bit more about how you do that part of it?
Yeah, all the time. My phone is filled with notes and quotes of random conversations I've had, random people I've seen. I could be out and about. Like that's like traveling and just going out, I think is really important, just as important as sitting at your computer and writing.
Mm-hmm.
Because yes, you'll see something that happens or somebody will say something. It's like that's going in the comic. That has
Whole place.
or yeah, or you meet somebody like that is a character, they're going in the comic.
Absolutely.
So yeah, like that is, just going out, meeting people, living your life is one of the best ways to get material, come up with characters, and yeah, then and just, watching, reading other stories, watching, other stories and just seeing a lot of times when I write dialogue, I try to write it in a way that people, whether a certain actor talked in this role or even people I know, it's like you
Mm-hmm.
have the way you talk is interesting. Let me try to like remember how you talk and write in your style of talking. That's the easiest way for me to write dialogue
That's
because I
quite the gift.
yeah
That's so like I can't even wrap my head around trying to do something like that. That's really cool.
yeah like I actually have to like hear that like I hear the dialogue in my head as this person speaking it through my character, and that's kind of like how I write dialogue.
That's really cool. So you're like, you might have James Earl Jones like talking to you in your ear, and then you might have like, I don't know, like Adam Driver saying something else, like, or
Yeah,
whoever. Like, that's really interesting.
yeah,
Just wow, yeah, that's really, really cool. Um, and I love that you incorporate perspectives that are different from yours. And
yeah, yeah.
now, one thing that I notice, it's funny because I work with a lot of parents, I work with a lot of teachers, and a lot of parents have a hang up on their kids reading comic books as like their primary reading material. And
Mhm.
I try to discourage them from squashing it because I personally think there's a lot of value in comic books, especially for a developing reader, because
Mhm.
there's pictures to accommodate the words, sometimes, but
Yeah,
the vocabulary sometimes is very
exactly.
advanced. Can
Yeah.
you speak to that part a little bit? Like, I want to hear it from a comic book author. Tell the people out there. Like,
Yeah, I think that's why I ended up with an extensive vocabulary, and I was really good at vocabulary tests is because I read comics, and they're using a lot of these, big words, grandiose words to describe, this character or what's going on that I didn't see in my level reading books or anything like that. So
right.
I think that definitely like, and then through the comics, like you said, the pictures, you know what it means, you
Yeah.
know, you
You're
know.
using context clues and
Yeah,
pictures. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like you see those tests and you're like, oh, I know that word, and like some of my classmates didn't because they weren't exposed to it, and yeah, I just think it's a really cool medium because it's visual, it's with pictures and not in words, and it's entertaining, and you can also again you can learn things. A lot of comics are rooted in science and a lot of or history and
Hmm.
stuff like that. So if like and have like they're historically accurate or use them as analogies or themes. And yeah, I've remembered answers on tests because oh that was in this one comic I read. I know
Right. Yeah,
that.
yeah. And your brain just held on to it, and yeah, because I know we got a curriculum at our school, and in 8th grade the book, one of the books they have to read is in comic book form,
Mhm.
and it's about World War II, I believe. I grabbed one so I could read it myself because I had not read it yet. It's Mouse, Maus.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Have you read it?
No, I should read it,
No,
but
I should read it.
I
I know. And
yeah,
if I'm
I,
not mistaken, I think it's on a banned book list somewhere,
yeah.
but I'm
Some
not sure.
schools it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I especially wanted to read it because that just makes me want to read it more.
Hmm.
And I'm like, what is this about? Other than I know it's about World War II, which is in general a touchy subject because
Yes. Yeah.
a lot of stuff happened there. Um, and I'm not sure how to segue into this next one. So I guess walk with me as I bumble through it a little bit. Um, you know, I work at a school where many of the kids qualify for free or reduced lunch, which means that that's the kind of the socioeconomic status that we're working with. And I'm trying so hard to provide accessibility to like literature, books, multiple kinds, not just regular books, but comic books, magazines, things like that. And I know they can access some stuff online, which is great. Um, what else can I do? Do you know of any ways to increase the accessibility to different kinds of literature for
Mm,
multiple communities? I know you mentioned your girlfriend's a teacher. Does she have to go through some of that stuff sometimes too, where she's trying to get access to stuff for her kids?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's I'm understanding the question correctly. Yeah, that's we're just talking reading materials or everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of everything, because one of the things that you mentioned when you said, comic books were increasing your vocabulary and things like that, it had a lot to do with the exposure.
Hmm.
So what I'm noticing on our end is that there's not a whole lot of exposure outside of whatever we provide for them in the classroom. So aside from encouraging them to get like a library card and to make some of the or access a digital library online, which is helpful, I'm trying to find other ways where they can take ownership of like literature somehow, so that they can, how can you build a love for reading if you don't have a book? Or how can I'm just trying to, I don't know if you have an answer for that, but it's just one of the
Yeah,
things that we've been working through, and I'm not sure, but I don't know.
yeah. Like for me, like I don't know, but I have a ridiculous comic book collection, and I'd be happy. Like I am running out of room. I'd be happy to donate some. You know,
Yeah, you
uh,
know, yeah.
that if I could help out in that way, but um, I guess I've always been very inquisitive.
Hmm.
It's like, why does this happen? Why is that like, or even why does this person think that, or why are things the way they are? And one of my dad's favorite things is like look it up. So now I just look up everything. Like
Right.
about, and especially like now today, it's like at your fingertips.
Yes, because
You
that
can,
they do have. Everybody has a phone.
yeah,
So at least there's that. So I know that there's ways to access some of it. Like where there is a will, there is a way. But,
right.
you know,
But and but some people don't want to do that. I don't know. I think that people should be more curious about the world.
yeah.
I one of the phrase I'm not particularly fond of is that's just the way it is. It's like,
Yeah. No, no, no. It is
yeah,
like that for right now, but we can't
yeah,
just succumb to it and be like, well,
exactly.
that is what it
Yeah,
is. Yeah. And it's one of the things that I'm trying to actively work on in our community. And it is really, really hard.
yeah,
Like, Because you also want to give authors their due. You want them to get their money and their
Mhm.
proceeds and things like that. But I also want to get as many books in as many hands as possible.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's just one of those things. But I think, have you ever considered being like a guest speaker at schools and stuff like that and talking to kids about
I
like
have
what
not.
your journey and just your personal experience and what you've done and things like that?
I have not, but that's something I'd love to do. I love to like, help or inspire anybody that, writes or wants to do creative things, or even if I can inspire them to do something that's not writing or creative, whether it's like I want to be a scientist, I want to be whatever. Like, I want to encourage you to do that. Like, like, and that it's possible. And, yeah, like, well, phrase that people go around saying, why not you? Because like, yeah, why not you? If
Why
you,
not you? Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Let's get you there. I know that some people have like disadvantages
yeah, for sure.
working, they're working against them, but if we can help them, that would
Yeah,
be
exactly.
ideal.
Yeah,
That's the point. I
yeah.
think that's kind of the main point. So, well, thank you. I know I asked you an awkward question that I know almost nobody has the answer to. I
That's
just
how.
didn't know if you knew of any resources maybe that I didn't, that I was just wondering about.
But that's the type of stuff that like, again, I don't like not knowing stuff. So now like my brain is like, I'm gonna think about that for a while. And I kind
Well,
of want
like
to,
one of the things that I've found that has been helpful, I haven't been able to do it since COVID, but through Scholastic, we have book fairs with them every year or whatever, but they have a thing where every month they feature different books that they sell for $1. And they're like brand new books. And I'm like, okay, so if I can raise, I think we have something like 750 kids at our school ish. And so if I can raise $750 to buy a book for each of my kids on campus once a month, then by the end of the year, they'll have 10 books in their hand and they can take that
nice.
home. And so that's the best I've found so far. And so,
Yeah,
but I'm like, there has to be a better way because there just has to be a better way. And so, I'm excited to hear like when this publishes, if people do have ideas and then if they comment it, that would be really cool.
for sure.
All right. So I am conscious of the time. Do you have our final question is, do you have a funny or joyful memory from being in school that makes you happy when you think about it, or laugh when you think about it in retrospect?
Funny, there's a lot.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can pick one. Um, I think they all center around, you know, thinking something was really, really hard. And but like, whether it's studying, teacher that or those a lot of those aha moments when the teacher explains it or it takes time to explain something to you and you get it.
Hmm.
And it just kind of like, mind expanding moments. Those are really cool. Trying to pinpoint one specifically. Oh man. I guess it was Mrs. Trout. I believe she was my AP English teacher. I want to say my junior year of high
Hmm.
school.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, I've heard themes, metaphors, and analogies and stuff like that. I was kind of like, whatever. But she explained it in such a way that it made sense, and that stories I didn't particularly care about when we read in high school, it made it more interesting. It made it come alive once, you know, I understood theme. I understood um, those literary devices more and metaphor, especially metaphors. Now, like once the metaphor thing clicked, I was like, what? It's like you can do that with words.
Yeah.
And it's like, of course, I was exposed to that previously, but it never really
Sometimes it takes a
registered.
few times. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know our sixth graders have been studying metaphors and similes and just what the difference is. And they are like, what? And so they always get the simile because they know what words to look for. But with
right.
metaphors, they're always like, I don't know. And so,
Yeah,
yeah. But yeah, that's funny. Well, Jamaal, thank you so much for your time. Do you want to share any of your social media or anything for people to be able to find you and follow you?
Sure, you can find and buy my comic books at www.royaloakcomics.com. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at royal_oak_comics. And thank you so much, Taleen, for having me on here. This was really fun. I want to compliment you. You have a really good podcast. Your like radio voice. This is
Well,
really
thank
good what
you.
you
I hope
guys
so. I
and
have
great
high hopes
questions
for it.
too.
Oh, thank you.
Great
Yeah. And I
questions.
really, really, really appreciate your time. And I was so excited when you agreed to do this. I was at lunch with a friend when you texted back and said that you would do it. And I was like, yes. So I was
Nice.
so I really, really appreciate your time because I really am in awe of what you're doing. And I can't wait to see what you've got going on next. And I'm just so happy to watch it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks.